We're back here on the first team. I'm Joe DeLeone, joined by Ryan Roberts, and we are doing our next position group, that being cornerbacks. And our scouting report episode of the week, we're going to be doing Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama, Kalen King from Penn State. Two guys that have been very hyped up ahead of this 2023 college football season, to the two players that have been described as potential first-round picks. You can see that in various angles. But Ryan, this grouping, they're unique. They're very unique, I think is the best way to put it.
Very different, right? I mean, we're going to talk about one guy in Kool-Aid who's a little bit more of that long, traditional outside corner that has length and athleticism. And then we're going to talk about Kalen King, who's a little bit more of the modern corner that can work a little bit inside and out, I think, eventually. More of the Jair Alexander type of mold. So it's an interesting comparison because I think both players are very worthy of the hype to a degree. But it's a very interesting conversation because we're going to talk about two players that stylistically very, very different. Like they're not at all similar. Like if you're talking about just kind of putting them in the same bucket, they're in two separate buckets, in my opinion, as far as their style as football players. So I'm interested in this one, man, because they both very talented, but just very, very unique, I think is the best way to put it. I agree.
That being said, let's start ourselves off with talking about Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama. Obviously has the most fun nickname in all of college football. Background on him, as you usually always have some really good info on these guys. What do you have for us on Kool-Aid McKinstry?
Well, I guess we got to start with his real name, right, Joe? I mean, his first name is not actually Kool-Aid for the people out there, right? It's Quincy, G-A apostrophe Quincy is his first name. So Quincy McKinstry, which is a very big tongue twister, and I completely understand why he goes by Kool-Aid, just based upon that. He's your traditional Alabama player. I mean, he went to Pinson Valley, which is in Birmingham, Alabama, stayed in state, obviously, to play with the Crimson Tide, was a 5-star on the 247 composite, number 23 overall player in the country in the composite ranking, state champion 2020, 3 state titles in 4 years. Chose Alabama over offers from Auburn and LSU. It seems like that was, the 3 finalists for him was Alabama, Auburn, and LSU. So, shocker, Joe. We're talking about a talented Alabama player who was a former 5-star recruit. Who would have thought that this would happen at some point in this cycle?
Yeah, it's also not the first guy that we've done. We already talked about Dallas Turner as one of the other talented, highly recruited kids on our preseason summer scouting series. Getting into Kool-Aid, though, as the player. You talked about his size, 6'1", 195. I don't know about you, but for a guy who's listed at 6'1" and he's listed as tall as he is, I didn't think he was particularly long, or for the fact that I don't think he's a player who wins with length. Like, I just didn't see any of that on film. You read into the bio, you look at 6'1", you immediately assume, oh, this is going to be a tall, long corner that is, you're going to play with a lot of leverage because he's got good length. I think for his height, if anything, he's got shorter arms, and I don't know if we've got a verified number on that, and I'd be curious if we did, but immediately stood out to me on film. Again, might be off base there. We might get a combine number that completely disproves that statement. But I think for him as a player, a really good athlete. I understand why he was a 5-star recruit. He moves very, very easy. He opens up very, very well. He can track guys. I can see like a 4.4-esque speed on film. I don't think it's much faster than that, but moves really, really easy in space. I just think that where there are the deficiencies, the athleticism makes up for it. The athleticism makes him a highly ranked player for me. But the deficiencies come with that lack of length. And then I just don't particularly see a ton of ball skills and then a ton of ability to impact the ball when it's in the air, when he's near a receiver. Again, well-rounded player, good football player, but I'm starting to wonder if those length issues might hold him back just slightly from being like a really, really highly talked about prospect instead of being just a really good, well-rounded guy that's going to be drafted high, but not in that top 20 range.
Joe, I'm very surprised, man. I thought you were going to come in and just start banging the table for Kool-Aid McKinstry. Like, this seems like your type of football player to me, man. Just seems like a little bit of your type. I'm a little surprised right now. Just
really?
A little bit. Yeah, just a little bit.
Why would he be my... Wait, I love Joey Porter Jr. That was my that was my type. Tall, really long arms. That was what I thought that Kool-Aid was going to be, and he wasn't.
I think he's a little longer than you might think. I think he's a little longer. Like he's not Joey Porter.
He doesn't use it.
I mean, Joey Porter had 4
He
inch
doesn't
arms.
use it.
He's like a once in a lifetime type of athlete at corner as far as the length is concerned. So I think we could agree there. I would say this about Kool-Aid. I started watching him and I wasn't a big fan the first like half of a game, but then I kept watching. I'm like, oh, really move, man. Like he could turn and run, he could change direction. His change direction skills are pretty dang rare, man. Like they're really, really good. I mean, they play him in off coverage, they play him in press, they play him in a little bit of every type of coverage shell. And he really excels, in my opinion, in press man because he just has this mirror and match ability and this ability to change direction. That's really impressive, man. It really is. I think that his ability to stay in the hip pocket, his ability to stay attached, his stickiness in coverage is really, really nice. And honestly, a lot of people, I think, kind of mid-season were kind of like, you know what? I'm not going to throw at number one anymore. Like, let's start throwing at Terrion Arnold and some of these other guys. Like why the heck would I ever do that? I'm not really sure why I would ever test the guy that's name is Kool-Aid McKinstry. So I think there was a lot of good there as far as just pure coverage skills. I really like the movement. I like the size. I think that everything is there from a coverage perspective. The two main knocks that I came out with. One, he has some flashes in the run game of being a violent hitter and being able to come to balance. And then there's other times where he just seems a little disinterested to me. So I think he's really good when he wants to be, but not consistently in the run game. The other thing that kind of drove me crazy a little bit is that he's so athletic that I think he tries to bait guys a little bit and he tries to be a little lax in his footwork. And I think that sometimes he could be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more just his pace needs to pick up a little bit. Like he just plays a little too relaxed at times for me. There's sometimes where he's in off coverage where I'm like, dude, if you want to react a little quicker and be a little more efficient with your footwork, you maybe could have had a pass breakup or an interception instead of just being late to the football a little bit. So I think just a little bit more urgency as a football player is what I really want to see from Kool-Aid in 2023. Like I think that's the next maturation piece.
Yeah, like that's where it kind of goes in line with what I talked about, that he's a really good athlete. The athleticism allows him to win. It allows for him to stay step with guys. He changes direction well. He opens up well. Fluid athlete. But I think what you're like my length concerns coupled with what you just talked about there, his positioning isn't always great. And I feel like I'm watching, he's not inexperienced because he's played a lot, but I feel like I'm watching a guy who, and it feels strange to say this for a Nick Saban defensive back, that has a lot more to learn about how to play better positioning, to better orient himself to make plays on the football. That's why I didn't get a lot of those, as you're saying. There's not a lot of ball skills on tape. I don't really see a lot of that because he just doesn't do it. And if he was better and had better awareness, he might have had more interceptions and more pass breakups. He's that good of an athlete. He could have done it. I don't know about you, but my grade on him, I gave him early to mid second.
Wow.
I think that is very, give him a top 50 grade. A high top 50. I think that he's a good football player, but I'm not really late first round. Maybe I wouldn't take him in the first round though.
Interesting. I would take him in the first round. I gave him a late first round grade. I think that those coverage abilities and the ability he has to change direction and turn and run and the flexibility, that's high upside, man. That's high caliber. And I know that it is maybe a little bit early comparative to where we are in summer scouting today, but we are in summer scouting. And there is some projection that needs to happen. And you just don't find guys that are 6'1", 195 that move the way Kool-Aid McKinstry does a lot. Like you don't. I think the things that drive you crazy, Joe, and drove me crazy as well, is that I think that he plays a little bit too laxed because for his entire life at this point, probably hasn't had to try hard all the time, like everything's just been easy for him because he's such a good athlete. And he has Nick Saban, who's one of the best developers of cornerback position that we have ever seen. So I trust as a junior that there's going to be a nice step forward for Kool-Aid McKinstry. I would draft him. I had a late first round grade on him. I would start thinking about it in the teens, and I would pull the trigger for sure in the 20s without even hesitating on it. I
Wow.
think that his upside is tremendous. There's some things that drive me crazy, but at the end of the day, man, 6'1", athletes, going to run probably high 4.3, low 4.4. He's going to have really good change of direction skills. You just don't find that too often. Like, there's just not that many
Hmm.
guys that are like that. Like, I remember this time last year, we were trying to buy ourselves into Keely Ringo a lot, right? And it was like Keely Ringo was a very straight line dude. This guy's not a straight line dude. This guy's a straight line dude
No.
who can also change direction, who can also play off man coverage, who can also just stay sticky to wide receivers all the time. So give me Kool-Aid and I'll bet on the traits. Is he a finished product? Absolutely not. But I wouldn't expect him to be, considering he's only 20 years old right now.
I also want to tell you folks about our other reoccurring sponsor that we have on this channel, that being BetOnline, betonline.ag, which is all the updated odds, news, and anything for sports betting. It's my go-to source for when I want to be betting specifically on games. I love betting on college basketball or the NBA, especially, again, during the offseason. Always looking for more fun ways to be focused in on some of these other sports. It's betonline.ag and use promo code BELIEVE50. It's promo code BELIEVE50 to get 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.